Hey, and welcome to What's the Story, brought to you by me, Delaney Schoenfeldt, and the CMCI 1010 Storytelling Module. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a rather controversial topic sweeping the college stratosphere: safe zones and trigger warnings. We're going to dig deep within the issue and examine it from the University of Colorado Boulder perspective. So, what's all the fuss about? Basically, a controversial letter was recently sent from the University of Chicago to their incoming freshman class condemning the censoring of information to prevent student discomfort. Within the official letter, the Dean of Students, Jay Ellison, writes that the school's commitment to academic freedom leads to the university not recognizing, quote, so-called trigger warnings and the creation of intellectual safe spaces. Ellison also continues on to say that the school will not cancel invited speakers because their topic might prove controversial, nor do they want students to retreat from ideas and perspectives at odds with their own. This has opened the discussion on how creating safe zones and implementing trigger warnings in the classroom has an effect on collegiate learning. For those of you who don't know, safe zones are specifically designed areas dedicated to making all students feel safe. Safe zones also serve as a place where all students can have their opinions heard and respected. As for trigger warnings, the Oxford Dictionary defines it as a statement at the start of a piece of writing, video, etc., alerting the reader or viewer for the fact that it may contain potentially distressing material. Now, CU Boulder is a school well known for its precautions taken for inclusivity. The school even has its own safe zone training conducted by the Gender and Sexuality Center. Morgan Seamont is the assistant director at said Gender and Sexuality Center, and I was able to sit down with him and ask him what is taught in the safe zone training.
So we teach about sex, gender, and sexuality to begin with, specifically in separating out those categories that, just because you're born male doesn't mean you're going to grow up to be a man, and vice versa, and that gender identity is separate from sexual orientation. So we sort of tease out those categories and then explain how all of those categories are a spectrum rather than an either-or box, that people fall along the line between those two everywhere.
Morgan, as a program administrator, is obviously in favor of creating safe zones, but does not believe in the concept of trigger warnings.
The problem with sometimes giving a trigger warning is that it also limits the conversation that you can have about things. I feel that probably trigger warnings are overused at this point. I think they have a place in certain times and certain spaces, but the classroom may not be one of them.
Vanessa Baird, professor of American politics at the University of Colorado Boulder, had a bit of a different opinion on trigger warnings.
I would be in favor of trigger warnings in a sense, to say, okay, now we're going to be talking about a sensitive subject so that people can prepare themselves. I think that trigger warning is being confused with not talking about controversial topics, because students have a lot of rights, but they do not have the right to feel comfortable in a classroom. It's not a right. It's a privilege to be here, and it's education requires being uncomfortable. But on the other hand, let people know, hey, it's a sensitive thing that's about to come, and I don't see that that's a problem for the First Amendment.
When asked if a student came to her discreetly asking to leave the class during topics of discomfort, Professor Baird had a very clear response.
I would say no. I would say yes, it's a free country. You can come in or, not be in class and miss class if you want to, but I wouldn't shield them from the consequences of not having that material.
Also, when asked about safe spaces and if they should be enforced by the university, Professor Baird, after a slight moment of hesitation, said no.
I'm probably going to have to come out on the side of no, mostly because the university is a state actor, and so for me, then there is a First Amendment issue there. on the other hand, when it comes to the First Amendment, there's one moral issue, and then there's the legal issue. The legal issue is the government can't stop you from speaking whatever you want to say. On the other hand, don't be a jerk. Why? And so what you hope is that people use the First Amendment responsibly, that they really take care when they speak.
After talking with Professor Baird and Morgan Seamont, to me, their thoughts boiled down to morals and basic wrong versus right. As of right now, we live in a society where education is more valued than feelings being hurt, and, maybe that's not a bad thing. Thank you all for listening. This has been Delaney Schoenfeldt with CMCI Storytelling, signing off.